Welcome to the Court of History. I'm here with my colleague Sean Wilentz of Princeton, and we're here to discuss our topic on the Court of History that is at the heart of what we really care about, among other things, besides the law and journalism and future of America, and that is history. And we are at an Orwellian moment, Sean, I think, where history is being abolished and terminated and eliminated across the board. We have the firing of the National Portrait Gallery head. We have the pressure put on the Smithsonian. And the Advisory Committee on Historic Diplomatic Documentation has been terminated. The Historical Advisory Committee of the State Department. It reminds me so much of Orwell of 1984, where Winston Smith, who is a bureaucratic worker at the Ministry of Truth, alters historical documents to make them fit what the party wants them to say about the past. And the party slogan is, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And the commissar, a guy named O'Brien, says, we, the party, control all records and we control all memories. Then we control the past, do we not? And that's how it strikes me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's the memory hole. It's an attempt. Look, at one and the same time, they're trying to take over the National Archives. And they can't touch the Library of Congress yet, but, who knows? But the National Archives for certain, very, very early on, in order to make sure, I think, that the record of the current administration would be to their liking. But now, of course, they've gone after history as well. So that it looks as if it's quite possible, as if they're going to try to, do exactly what Orwell was talking about, create a kind of ministry of truth. Whereby, it's no longer the case that we all have different opinions and there's no such thing as an objective truth. They are the objective truth. That's what I fear is going on here.
There's been an effort to make sure this doesn't happen, and an effort by the United States government. And there was an extraordinary project of the U.S. State Department to publish volumes about the foreign relations of the United States, going back as far as Lincoln. And it's very important archivally as well, because this group of historians who are nonpartisan go through the classified documents as well and sift through them to write the history. It's incredibly valuable to get that kind of history written and to have people go through those kinds of archives. And as it happens, we have the former head of the Historical Advisory Committee who was fired recently, as every member of the committee was from the State Department, and the project terminated that's so invaluable to our country's understanding of its past. With us, Richard Immerman, and he is a professor of history emeritus at Temple University. He's the director emeritus of the Center for the Study of Force and Diplomacy. And he was himself the assistant deputy director of national intelligence at one point. And he was the 40th president of the Society for Historians of American Foreign Relations. And we're very pleased to get his views and information on what's just happened here. Can you tell us what's happened, Professor Immerman?
Yes, I'll be happy to, but I should correct you in one moment, is that I was not fired. I was actually, my tenure ended several years ago. After having chaired the HAC for some 11 years. We can go into that because this is actually the second attempt of the Trump administration. During Trump 1, the same effort was done. This was during my tenure, and I was able to stop that, or help to stop that. What happened in this case is, in contrast to what happened before, is there was no prior warning that all of the members of the State Department Historical Advisory Committee, which is established by Congress, all of them received very short emails saying your tenure is terminated effective immediately. Thank you for your service. That was it. And there are 9 members of the Historical Advisory Committee. 6 of them are established by the legislation. They are the statutory organizations. That includes the American Historical Association, the Organization of American Historians, the Society for Historians of American Foreign Relations, the American Political Science Association. You get the idea. And then 3 at large, which have actually increasingly been used to bring in people who are experts in editing documents and other things, as opposed to just, historians like myself. But they were all wiped out. Although we recently received word that there was some plan to replace it, no one knows what that is. And I can say, just having known about the law, that there is no plan that can be put in place that does not violate the statute, because the statute is very specific as to the process by which these members are selected, and they are nominated by these organizations. And none of the organizations, including the Society for Historians of American Foreign Relations, of which I am now executive director, so I would know, have been consulted.
So this is illegal, what's just happened?
I'm not a lawyer, but my short answer is no, it's not. I don't think at this point we should be surprised that, I think that they're pushing the law. What I'm a little bit concerned about is, it goes into the law, into the courts. God knows how long it takes. The Foreign Relations series has been struggling over the last decade to keep pace with the volume of documents that need to be looked at, the volume of documents that need to be declassified to be included this. So if you have, let's just say, a 3 or 4 year hiatus in which people are wondering how this is going on, will never catch up. And again, the law does stipulate how that there's supposed to be a 30-year rule, which we're behind, between the creation of a document and when it's published in the Foreign Relations series. Right. I'll just say one quick thing, that, of course, there is a distinction between the Historical Advisory Committee and the Office of the Historian itself, the compilers, who also are skilled historians, and they will continue to do their work to the best that they can. But the hack, as it's known, plays a crucial role in advising, particularly when it has to do with the documents that are not declassified, and whether or not we sign off that the volume is what's known as thorough, accurate, and reliable. Those are the words that are in the statute. So it will be very, very difficult. But I don't want to leave the impression that, which I fear that the president or the administration will realize, that dismembering the hack necessarily destroys the compilation of the fruits. It's a complicated system, and that those historians have the greatest integrity, and they are going to do the best that they can. But we play a pivotal role, and that role is at this point is as I say, put on hiatus.
What do you think is being lost in disbanding the hack, the Historical Advisory Committee?
Right.
Wow.
And these volumes are absolutely indispensable.
It's essential.
Historians. You've used them, haven't you?
Sure. I haven't used them as much as others, because it only starts at Lincoln, and I mostly do before then. But I've used them for Lincoln, and but I also know from other historians. Without the fruits, we can't write diplomatic history, the history of this country. It's impossible.
Yeah, if I
And
can
it
just
also
interrupt.
it has present day connections even beyond the historical, because there are all sorts of issues that remain that linger. Everything from, I don't know, the history of the Cuban Missile Crisis, you name it, the what was going on in the Iran Contra, all of that. These are all matters that are of current importance. So that if you do anything to compromise the FRUS, in my opinion, you're not simply hampering historians, and not just diplomatic historians or historians of foreign policy, but people like me who just dip into it and have to know the truth. But it also hurts the present as well. I mean, that's where the memory hole thing comes in. It would have a devastating effect on our understanding of past and present questions regarding America's place in the world.
Yeah,
And that's my view.
well, it's not just your view. I mean, Congress consults these volumes all the time.
Yes.
Diplomats consult these volumes all the time. If you're going to, you mentioned Cuba, you're going to Ukraine, you're going to anywhere, you need to know the history of it. That was part of it. Not to mention, recently Joseph Nye died, and he coined this term soft power. The transparency that these volumes represent, telling our history, the whole history. That's what the legislature did. And was part of the controversy, acknowledging covert actions and other things like that. That the United States does that, projects a certain image, a certain confidence in who we are that I think has tremendous international ramifications. And even the suggestion that we would be trying to tamper with those documents, that we would be including, just as in an archive, only certain documents that would tell certain story, and to whitewash other incidents, that to me is so inimical to the national interest. When it was set up in the Civil War, part of it, and was Seward, is that he wanted to show a confident, unified, powerful country. That goes back into the 1860s. So now we're going to call that into question at this time in world history. I just think it's foolhardy and counterproductive, and I can't understand why Congress itself hasn't responded more aggressively to what's going on.
Well, I've been in government myself and been involved in foreign relations as well during the Clinton administration. And it's important to have a clear view of the past in order to understand what you're doing in the present. And it's crucial to have a reliable record that experts have compiled. And not only for government, as you point out, but also people in the Congress. And I want to underscore that, because those committees that write legislation and that oversee foreign policy also require not simply a tunnel vision, but a sense of the past in order to understand what they're doing. I wonder if you could cite a couple of examples from the work of the project in which incidents have been clarified that are particularly notable to you.
Yeah, well, I'll do one which has tremendous contemporary salience. The legislation, the 1991 Foreign Relations Act, was enacted by Congress in response to public pressure, some in academics, but we're just academics, but in the press and larger public, because of the publication of the Foreign Relations volume on Iran, specifically the volume that had to do with the overthrow of Mossadegh in 1954. And the initial volume made no reference to that whatsoever. A similar volume had happened before on Guatemala, which I happen to have worked on, and that also There was no reference to the operation. So Congress got involved, making the case that for the United States to be what the United States wanted to be, we had to have a thorough, reliable, and accurate history of our life. And that included some unsavory behavior that we did. And there was a whole sort of uproar. God, don't do that. It's going to cause a furor. Well, in fact, 20 years later, we did what we call the retrospective. It was a do-over. And that and it didn't have everything. But it was very complete, and it certainly allowed for the reconstruction of those events that happened in 1954, which remain sort of very salient in terms of contemporary relations with Iran. Similar, there were volumes with a number of the countries, Congo in Africa, Chile and Allende. All of these had information that was, there were rumors about it, which I think is counterproductive. And here's really what happened. The flip side of that is at one point, there were lots and lots of ideas that, the United States must have been involved in the revolution in the Philippines. And, because of course, the CIA was doing all sorts of things. In fact, that wasn't the case. So as I say, that it's both sides. It shows what we did and what we did not do, and it focuses on the decision making, so you get a better understanding of the reasons behind the behavior. Europe, NATO, the whole issue with Russia, and that those volumes are coming out now. They're currently working on the Reagan years and beginning to do the Bush years, although, as I said, they've been somewhat held up to declassification issues.
Yeah. So you are an expert in Cold War diplomacy and have done a lot, beginning with the Eisenhower period on that. And I actually have been in touch with John Meacham, our mutual friend, who says he's been in touch with you about the work he's doing on Eisenhower, work in progress. And of course, you'd be the authority to consult. And that provides some perspective, as you just noted, the suppression of history and how the U.S. has recovered its integrity by going back and reporting on it. And then through the Cold War, you had a very close-up look at how the Soviets, that is the Russians, suppressed history in the classically Orwellian way as a contrast. And I wonder what you learned from watching that process.
Well, again, I'll go back to my reference to soft power, or the projection of an image and of a confident country, and of the type of country that other nations will be attracted to. And the more we learned about the Soviet system and its suppression and the difficulty of getting at the archives from sort of the Stalin years on, and I have to compliment the Soviet historians who've done an amazing job of prying that loose. But the contrast between that and the United States, which, I keep using this word sort of confidence, that we don't have anything to hide. Or if we do have things that some people might hide, we don't hide them because, we're a nation, and nations don't always behave perfectly. But we learn from our mistakes, and an issue like Iran and others, I think in retrospect, we could say we should have perhaps done things differently. But these volumes, unlike those from the Soviet Union, they allow us to gain insight as to why the Eisenhower administration, which is generally viewed as in positive light, it's restraint, that it sought nuclear arms limitation, and we have lots and lots of documentation through foreign relations because of that. And yet it was also the administration that orchestrated a number of covert actions, which have come back to a large extent to haunt the United States in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really important to understand not simply that we have nothing to hide or we have something to hide. There is a decent interval that passes. There's a way in which, this is not being written about things that happened a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. There's a decent interval that has passed that allows for a kind of objectivity, which is essential to all of this. And it's actually the idea of objectivity is something that I think is threatened these days anyway. There's an idea that there is no such thing after all. It's just, and this comes from the left and the right, actually, that everything's about power. There's no such thing as objectivity. Well, objectivity is not easily gained, and especially in something as complicated as American foreign relations. However, if you allow objective scholars who have no bone to pick one way or the other, and you give them the time to do it, if you give them the time to do it and the access to the things that they need to do it, that's what we're aiming for. That's what we can do. So we're not just standing up for ourselves, which we are. We're not just giving an example to the world of who we are. We're giving an example to everybody about how you can conduct historical investigation and on very, very difficult matters and own up to them when you have to.
Right. And I'll just repeat that the statute calls for 30 years.
Right.
Before these volumes are published, which one does allow time for, it's more than just the first cut of history that
Right.
we can reflect. And in addition, it gives us time to look back. What is sensitive? What is not sensitive? The process of declassification is really quite complicated. When I was in the intelligence community, we learned all about that. But we're not, foreign relations, is not publishing volumes on what happened yesterday or the day before. It's going back. And I think that allows for the type of consideration, it is, John said that, objectivity, which we always strive for, even if we can't think that we ever can really obtain it.
Right.
Do you have any sense, you got no reason explained to the HAC, the Historical Advisory Committee, on why it was terminated? There was no reason given.
No, I'll just do a quote from, as I said, the last time they tried to do this, which was in 2018. And at that point, I had a meeting with the Assistant Secretary of State for Public Affairs, under which the Office of Historian was at that time. It has then moved. And she was very clear. She said, shouldn't the president have the committee that he wants? And that's basically a quote. And I responded and I said, no, there's a law that the president cannot have the committee that he wants. It is represented, it is composed a committee of members of the academic community who have an expertise and do not have, a dog in this fight, as our friend Lyndon would say. So if you were to ask me why he did that, first of all, it is this, I think, compulsion to have the committee that he wants, just like that he wants the government that he wants. But in addition to that, I think this is administration that is very much afraid of expertise of any sort. And if there's one thing that the committee represents, it's expertise. We come from different people, from different areas, and we're qualified. And it is because of that expertise that the office of the historian itself, the historians there, they will have confidence in us when they listen to our judgment as to whether or not a volume that, as I said, is missing certain documents because for good reason they remain classified, that this committee thinks, well, the story it tells is an accurate story, even if it does not have this detail that frankly is not going to change the overall narrative of what's going on.
Well, thank you, Richard Immerman. a professor emeritus at Temple University, who was previously the head of the Historical Advisory Committee that produces the indispensable volumes for not only historians, members of Congress, and diplomats and Americans, and an invaluable national resource that has been terminated for no reason. And thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And let's continue our discussion about the importance and value of history here on the court of history, which is, as Sean and I believe, the ultimate court. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.